Hello, this is a tour to the American corner Pretoria. It's at the Semi-Mark Square inside the esteemed Library. Entry is free and the services at the American corner are also free. You'll find the friendly staff ready to welcome you and show you all the services that are available. It was established in 2014 when the city of Tshwane agreed to partner with the United States Embassy to create a space that will promote research and professional development. Accessing the American corner is as easy as checking in. You'll have free access to books, popular magazines. You'll have access to our workstations where you can access high-speed internet and online databases. The American Corner also has a state-of-the-art makerspace. It's an awesome space for creators with programs such as photography and filmmaking, STEM programs, 3D design, coding, and robotics. The American Corner also has presentation-ready auditoriums where you can attend different programs such as entrepreneurship workshops, exchange programs like Education USA. You can attend massive open online courses, panel discussions on different topics, web chats, video conferencing, and film screening. The auditoriums are also fit to accommodate the arts, from visual arts to performing art to hosting exhibitions, poetry workshops, open mic sessions, and it's all free. So come, be a part of the American Corner Pretoria. Hello, this is a tour to the American Corner Pretoria. It's at the Semi-Mark Square inside the esteemed Library. Corner are also free.
To walk into a library is to stumble into a celebration, a tribal party of diverse books, each uniquely designed. It's walking into an embrace of welcoming aunts and uncles, dancing and ululating, bearing different gifts of knowledge. Like air that holds no preference, like spirit held in trance. This here is a ritual as we dance between the shelves. Aren't we just beautiful in our sun-kissed hues of skin? Let our kin not get lost in translation or marred by segregation. Let our books pass down as tradition to nourish coming generations. We are all books in this library with different stories and identities. To read is to join the celebration. Are you here for the festivities?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special Loeries Women's Month project webinar chat that we have with some of our really, really amazing guests. Today, I'd like to welcome them first, maybe just say hello before I carry through. Andrea, hi, are you there? Hi, Andrea. Lerato?
Hello.
Hi, Andrea. Andrea, amazing to have you on. Lerato, amazing to have you on as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Preetesh. And I want to just say hi to AQ. She used to be my client. So it's nice to be here with her and everybody else. Hi, Ants. This is such a wonderful occasion. I'm excited. Thanks for inviting me.
Amazing. So good to have you on. And then also one of my friends as well, Anne Githuku-Shongwe. Thank you so much for joining us, Anne.
Thanks, Preetesh. Thank you. Great to be here. Hey, Q, I see you have a new life. And hi, Lerato. Thanks, Preetesh.
It's a small world. We all know each other. And I think one of the things I'd like to do is, if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, to everyone who's on the call, my name is Preetesh Sewraj. I'm CEO of the Loeries, and so good to have you in this. Today, we're chatting Let's Talk Gender Equality in the Workplace, brought to you by the US Embassy in South Africa and the American Corner Pretoria. This is obviously an amazing project to actually bring some strong voices so that we're inspired to go into the future. In fact, one of the things that I do want to do as we get into this is again, read a little bit as we wait for everyone to actually just get onto the call, and I can see the numbers going up really, really quickly, just to give you an overview as to why we are here today. And again, excuse me as I look to the right, I'm not ignoring you, I'm just reading off my notes. So we all need, I can't remember all of this, so we're gonna have to rely on my notes. So we're here today because the fight for gender equality is a continuing struggle for women around the world. The goal of ending gender inequality and delivering the real empowerment of women requires sustained effort and advocacy from all sectors of society. A key area of improvement should be in the workplace. Many women are overlooked for senior roles, and even when such roles are achieved, the gender pay gap is a reality, with South Africa having a median gender pay gap of between 23 and 35%, which is higher than the very troubling global average of 20%. We are aware of the great degree of focus that is created around Women's Month. But these conversations should not only peak during this period while not receiving the momentum it deserves throughout the year. On this, the final day of Women's Month 2021, the US Embassy in South Africa, American Corner Pretoria, and the Loeries are joining forces in order to host this very, very important call. And our key goal of this is to ensure that, and it's very strategic on this, the final day, to be able to go into the next month motivated and inspired, and not to leave Women's Month behind in August 2021, but to say it will be something that's a focus in September, October, November, and into the future, regardless of the month. And it's something that we're all going to take care of together. One of the key challenges that we all know is we all get really, really motivated behind amazing causes, and there's so many causes that we need to celebrate. And sometimes what happens is, as we go through this journey, we sometimes forget about important causes. And one of the causes that we should not leave is the fight for women's equality in our society. And this is why we are here today. So just to give you a little bit about our speakers, we've said hello and followed protocols. I am going to quickly give you a quick background and then introduce you to Jameson DeBose, who joins us from the US Embassy. But first, just an introduction to some of our speakers, starting off with Anne. Anne Githuku-Shongwe is the representative for UNWomen's South Africa Multi-Country Office, SAMCO, which is responsible for women's empowerment and gender equality in Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland, and Namibia, as well as South Africa, where the office is based. A key responsible of our work is to develop women-owned businesses and the leadership capacity of women both in the public and private sector. Moving on to Andrea, and just to read a little bit about Andrea. Andrea has an honors degree in economics from the Université Pierre Mendès. My French is horrible, Andrea. It's horrible. I will try. I love France and visiting, but it's terrible. So correct me, excuse me why I'm terrible at these pronunciations. And the DESS International Business from the Institut d'Administration des Enterprises des Poitiers. I definitely said that incorrect. But anyway, Andrea spent half a decade at Unilever, managing brand expansions and portfolios that set the tone for her marketing approach. Andrea joined SAB Miller Africa as marketing development manager, and in 2000 and in 2005 and in 2007 was appointed capability development manager. Andrea has carried on with an illustrious career that has then taken her to the Loeries, where she served on the board as Loeries, and is currently at Coca-Cola, where Andrea serves as, and it's a mouthful, as a senior director and global category lead on coffee at the Coca-Cola company. Thank you for joining us, Andrea. Also joining us is Lerato Tshabalala. Lerato, what I'm really excited about is this is our first time meeting, and I'm really excited to have this chat with you as well. Just to give you a little bit of background about Lerato. Lerato Tshabalala is a writer and editor with 15 years experience in print media, from starting out as a junior writer at Fair Lady magazine. The proud sweater and went off to edit South Africa's largest lifestyle supplement, the Sunday Times. In 2004, she won the Monday Award while working for Marie Claire South Africa. And in 2013, she was Mail and Guardian named her one of 200 young people to watch in the media category. What's also amazing was that in 2014, Lerato was chosen as one of the first alumni of the Mandela Washington Fellowship. I'm sure everyone knows about it. If you don't know about it, please go up and read up on the Mandela Washington Fellowship. It's there's the entry, the next round of entries are open right now as well. And as part of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, it allowed Lerato to study business at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, USA. Thank you so much to the three of you for joining us. And we're so honored to have all of you on this call to continue this discussion. One of the things that's also really, really important as well is that we are joined by Jameson DuBose. And I'd like to read a little bit about Jameson before I hand over to him to share a little bit more about our chat today and our purpose. So Jameson DuBose is the acting cultural attaché at the US Embassy in Pretoria and has served as a US diplomat, building people-to-people ties between the United States and the world for more than 13 years. His previous overseas assignments include the US embassies in Brussels, Islamabad, and Bangkok. He has also served in Washington, DC, in the Department of State's Bureau of African Affairs and Population Refugees and Migration, respectively. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Foreign Service from Georgetown University, and I've had the privilege of going past, and it's what a beautiful space Georgetown University has, and a Master of Arts in International Communication from the American University. So honored to have you here, Jameson, and so appreciative of you supporting this initiative. Thank you so much. And I'd like to hand over to you to share some of your thoughts before we continue our chat.
Great. Good evening, everyone. And thank you very much, Preetesh, for that great introduction. It is an absolute privilege to be with you tonight in my capacity as the acting cultural attaché here at the Embassy of the United States in Pretoria. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion and building on those enduring ties between the United States and South Africa, as you've already talked about, kind of the linkages that our speakers have with their truly global work. It's just an excellent way to commemorate Women's Month. It's the attendance that we're seeing here tonight is a true sign that the issue of gender equality is something that people across South Africa care about and have an interest in exploring. And it's really an honor to have these esteemed businesswomen on our panel today. I want to thank Andrea, Anna, and Lerato for taking time from their busy schedules to spend their evening with us. This sort of activity and exchange is really only possible through great partnerships like the one we have with Loeries. So I want to recognize Preetesh, as well as Chief Operating Officer Susie Bowling, for your role in making this partnership with us a reality. It's a partnership that started in 2019 with a speaker from the United States named Jess Weiner. She just so happens to be a business consultant and very well accomplished businesswoman in her own right. And one of the things she's very well known for is actually helping Mattel transform the image of its iconic Barbie doll to be more inclusive and to represent a greater diversity of roles women have in the workplace and society, that of doctor, judge, lecturer. And it may seem trivial to some, but representation matters. And this example of one doll shows that diversity and inclusion can really make a concrete difference. One reason being, and one kind of outcome of that, is that Mattel posted its biggest sales figures in a decade after this transformation in its approach. So tonight we kind of continue this trend line of bringing talented women together with audiences, together with Loeries, with the American Corner of Pretoria. We shine a spotlight on the experience and knowledge of these change makers. And, the United States is also committed to empowering women leaders through the amazing exchange programs that we have, such as the Mandela Washington Fellowship, as you heard about, the International Visitor Leadership Program, our Fulbright Educational Exchange programs, a program called Tech Women, and the Fortune U.S. Department of State Global Women's Mentoring Partnership, to name a few. While this program is indeed virtual due to the COVID operating environment, it is important to note that we are hosting it through this network of American Spaces that you saw on the video playing in, and specifically through our American Corner in Pretoria. So if you're not familiar with this network yet, and this is your first exposure to it, welcome. And just know that these resources, these capacity building programs, and everything else we offer through it are there for you to explore and learn more about. And we definitely look forward to hosting you at future events too, including the next time we work with Loeries. So before I turn it back over, let me just say one more time that it's really a true honor to be in this space, sharing this opportunity with all of you. And I look forward to the discussion to come. Back to you, Preetesh.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Jameson. And thank you for the support that you and the US Embassy have given to so many valuable causes. You're absolutely right. I mean, we have an amazing partnership with the US Embassy as the Loeries. Jeswina was absolutely amazing, being able to share such amazing insights and gave a lot of her time to being able to support our local society in terms with lots of the knowledge that she has. And we continue to stay in touch as well. So amazing. Thank you so much for that. Also, American Corner Pretoria, if you have not had a chance to visit, I think it's one of these hidden gems that you absolutely need to visit. I was honored and lucky enough to spend a couple of days at American Corner Pretoria a few years ago, and I'm sure it's changed and evolved quite a bit since then. And it's an amazing space that you can actually go and use the facilities to actually develop your knowledge, develop your creativity, and actually just explore in terms of different areas. And it's all free of charge. Obviously, during COVID, there are some COVID protocols. So please, can I please recommend, have a look onto the American Corner of Pretoria Facebook page to give you all of the details that you need in terms of how to visit, when to visit, and the protocols that are being observed. As we know, it changes at any random time. Also, what's really, really important, I want to share a very, very special welcome to everyone joining us on Facebook on the American Corner page. If you're joining us on Facebook on the American Corner page, I'm sure you're used to the American Corner and the initiatives and all of the amazing work that's been done. So thank you to all of you joining. Just a reminder that since we're sitting in a Zoom environment, we cannot see your questions, comments, or statements. So please still feel free to share. And I'm assisted by Clocky from the Loeries team, who will be able to look out for that and share it onto us as well. So still continue sharing your chats. As Larissa Morar has just done now on Zoom, where she says the quality of the people in this board is outstanding. So thank you so much for that, Larissa, and really, really appreciate it for sharing that. And I'm so honored to be able to share this space with all of these amazing women as well. What we should do, and what's really important, is this is my time to stop talking. I want to hear from all of you. So just in terms of the way my screen is set up, Andrea, maybe just hello and tell us a little bit about yourself other than my introduction. What have we missed out and what should people know about you and really about your fight for gender equality?
Thank you very much, Preetesh. Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm really grateful, Jamison, as well, for being invited. So my name is Andrea, and I have been in business for quite a few years, and I believe that as an individual, I fight for gender equality from within. And I think they're very different ways, and different people have different ways of doing it. And you've got to find a way that you believe is most aligned with who you are and where you can see the most results. I'm a mother of two. I'm married and I'm a mother of two. I am an avid ultra marathon runner. So, and I tend to get obsessed about things. So when I love something, I really, kind of get obsessed with it. I believe that gender equality is actually good for business. There's a logical sense for it. It isn't a nice to have. It's good for business. It's good for growing businesses because it improves results. And I think the example that Jamison gave around Mattel is a really great example. It improves results. It improves culture. When you find environments where there are women and there are men together and the diversity that brings, it really improves culture. You find that in environments where there are more women, there is a tendency to create a much closer knit environment. Decision making is often better because different points of view are brought together. So if I had to summarize my approach to gender equality, is don't be apologetic about it, expect it, and when you don't get it, challenge it, because you need to use your talents, you need to use your voice and your craft to create a better space. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Andrea, and love what you're saying. Anne, next on the screen, share a little bit more about yourself and your long fight for gender equality and the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you. I think one of the big things I would say about myself is that wherever I am, I find reason to really drive an inspirational cause that will bring in more and more partners. So unlike Andrea, who's talking about driving it from the inside, mine is about mobilizing from the outside and it really trying to get buy-in from as many people as possible, because this is movement stuff. It's the kind of stuff where you need to convince Jamison and Preetesh and Andrea and everyone who is in this room that they have a specific role, and without them, we cannot make this move. So my time at UNWomen, this has been a big cause. And, you know, the other day I was doing a countdown and thinking, how wide have we reached? How far have we actually reached? But that's a lot of what for me has been the cause. You know, I did in my previous life, try out entrepreneurship, and I was really a tech entrepreneur using gaming as a communication tool to get to young people, to really try to shift the way they think about themselves and about issues of gender equality, civic education. And so, you know, I am a tech social entrepreneur as well in my, as part of my identity and who I am. But I think that ultimately it's about finding new platforms all the time. So I'm always looking for new platforms and new ways to reach people where we haven't reached them. Yeah, I think that would really describe who I am. I'm also a mother of 3 big children who are all taller than me, and I think I'm not very short. But yeah, I'm an Africanist, a Pan-Africanist. I come from different worlds. This world, I'm from Kenya as well, so that means that I'm always looking beyond our borders to think, how does what we do influence what happens across Africa in general? Yeah, and I've got all kinds of aspirations, which I don't want to share with you right now, but you know, that's who I am.
And hopefully you share some of that in our chats that we're going to have over the next hour or so. But
we'll see.
Well, we'll see. Anne and I know each other for a while, so I'm hoping I can coax some of her amazing ideas. I know Anne's always working on amazing projects and we have amazing chats. So let's hope we'll get some of those insights today. Lerato, we have not met before. And as I said, I'm excited for us to have this chat and for me to get to know you better and for everyone on our call to get to know you better as well. So share more about yourself and your thoughts on gender equality.
I'm so excited, first of all, to meet you for the first time. I've been invited before, just haven't had the time. And now I'm sitting here like, damn, you should like go and judge some Loeries. So next time I will. First of all, I just want to say what an honor to be amongst such great women. I love the mix of people that have been chosen for this panel, because I am in my 40s, I'm single, never been married, with no children. So I'm like the complete the antithesis of Anne and AQ, but we have a lot of similarities. So when I worked at a different agency, AQ was by the way, Andrea, me and Andrea were the only 2 people, only women on the floor who were referred to by their initials. So people in advertising know me as LT and AQ's AQ. We were the only 2 people on the floor who were referred to by that. So I feel like when I speak to AQ, I speak to a woman who understands certain things. She did something really amazing the first time I met her. we were in a large boardroom, and I think 40% of the people were, 60% maybe were men. And there was no seat at the table, okay? And there was one next to AQ. And I decided, because you know, there were VPs and all these other things, to sit at the back. I don't know if you remember this, Andrea. I sat at the back and she turned around and she said, no, come sit here. And that is one of the most important things for me, is making sure that when you have a seat at the table, you invite others. I didn't think I was worthy of sitting in the same space as Andrea. And in that moment, I didn't even tell her anything. In that moment, she was like, this girl who's a person of color, and POCs, we need to, especially people of color, women, we need to come together, and she did that. So AQ, I never got to thank you, and so I'm thanking you publicly for doing that for me. I went and talked about you. I was like, I love her so much. She gave me a seat at the table, literally. But just to go back to why we're here today, I'm using my voice slightly differently in that I'm a writer, right? I'm a writer, I'm a creative. And so I, in a way, what writers do is represent the people, right? And so I write to express what people are feeling, in particular, women are feeling, but in particular, Black African women. So in 2019, I did some work with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on gender equality, and research came out that said it's going to take 108 years before we can see real gender equality. That's over millennia. We cannot afford that. Do you know what I mean? And I think the reason why we cannot afford it, we see what COVID-19 has done. Households that have two incomes are surviving a lot better than households where one person was running things, whether the person was a man or a woman. So we need the women in the workforce, as Andrea said, not just economically, but to actually preserve families. So that's why gender equality is so important to me. And also it's important to me personally, because I don't have to be in my 40s married with children if I don't want to be. I don't even have to be straight if I don't want to be. And I don't have to explain myself to you. So for that reason, like Anne, I'm an Africanist, I'm a feminist. I believe that women should speak for themselves without somebody giving them permission to. So that's why I'm excited to be here today for us to chat.
Amazing, thanks for that. And I completely agree with you. You know, one of the key challenges we have is that sometimes based on society, based on culture, there's a stereotypical life journey that we're all expected to take. And Anne will share with us, we have worked quite a bit in breaking down as many stereotypes as we can. I absolutely agree with you. There is no particular life journey that absolutely defines a good life or a normal life. Any journey that anyone's taking is an exciting life. And I think that's the most important thing we have to do. Also important for today is just to share is that while we're all together and I'm asking questions and I'm discussing, this is not a interview situation. What it really is, it's an open discussion. So please feel free to jump in at any point. So Lerato says something, Anne and Andrea, you're welcome to jump in and add your thoughts and comments. We want to have a robust discussion. And that also applies to everyone on the call. So if you want to be part of it and something sparks your thought process, remember the Q&A function is available, the chat function is available. So share your questions, share your comments, and we'll be able to take and share as many of those as well. I'll also try and get through as many questions as we can. Moving back on to the issues of gender inequality in society, and it's something that we as the Loeries as well join the US Embassy in South African American corner as well, and trying to fight and trying to improve in society, is that one of the things we recognize, though, there is a state that we should actually look at right now. And Anne, maybe handing off to you. You do a lot of work being a representative for UNWomen and spending a lot of time at the United Nations in New York. What is the state of gender inequality in society? Because it's not gender equality, it's really the gender inequality. How bad is the state of the state in society right now?
Well, thanks, Preetesh. And let me just start by saying that this is 26 years since the Beijing meeting that defined the blueprint for what gender equality is. Until then, you know, we were having some struggles here and there, but we didn't have a document or a strategy really for what gender equality, you know, what we needed to do. And it has 12 critical areas, a Beijing platform for action. And we've used that as a guide over the last 26 years now. And so last year we did a full review across the world. Every country produced a report. And the summary of that report is that we looked at it and reflected, and rightfully, as Lerato was saying, you know, the numbers range from 108 to 270 to 700, depending on the sector, years away from gender equality. So countries have signed up that by 2030, we will see the end of gender inequality. So that's 9 years away. But in truth, if you look at whether it's the gender pay gap, or you look at, you know, the harassment and violence in the world of work, or we look at all these different issues that women that are about gender inequality, we are many, many years away from them. But we did make some progress. We made some progress. And an example of where we made progress is girls' education. We made great progress in girls' education. More girls are in school now. It's an acceptable thing for girls to be in school. Maternal mortality is less and less. More women are able to give safe childbirth. Less countries have discriminatory laws, in large numbers. Most countries have some form of non-discriminatory law in their countries, but there is no country today that has no discrimination, right? So we actually took a review of this, and we decided that the only way for us to move forward with gender equality is to build this new global campaign that we're calling Generation Equality, that then identified 6 of the areas that were furthest left behind. And let me mention the 6. The 6 are gender-based violence, economic justice, climate justice, women's leadership and feminist movements, technology and innovation, and bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights. These are the 6 areas where we found that no matter where we looked, these continue and they're pervasive in most countries, and in fact in all countries, at varying degrees. And so, a lot of the work we do at the United Nations, and you're right, we go to New York and we have all these debates about what we're going to do about gender equality. And what we realized is that we've been having too many conversations with the converted. It's like talking to ourselves. And so we decided this has to be completely opened out and create these multilateral, multisectoral, intersectional, intergenerational platform of generation equality that will bring everybody in. So under each one of these 6 areas, we've created what are called action coalitions that combine governments of the South and North, private sector philanthropists, civil society organizations, women's organizations, young people, in a large degree, young people, who are challenging what it is that we've been doing so far and what we need to do anew. So where are we? We are still way, way away. We've made progress in some areas and we can count some progress, but we still have a lot of work to do. And really the Generation Equality Forum is our response to that. And we can talk some more about that.
And 9 years. I mean, we've struggled with this from time immemorial. Honestly, do you think we can achieve this equality within the 9-year time frame?
I mean, I think that there are certain steps that we have to take, and you think about any change, Black Lives Matter and racism, the rights of LGBTQI plus persons, whether the church is going to accept, a woman to be in the church. Anti-apartheid, can we actually imagine a time with no apartheid? None of these have happened at the same pace. That you have a particular pace, but like any change agenda, there's always an inflection point. And what we've been trying to do right now is to create an inflection point. And that inflection point means that those who hold the keys to gender equality from an institutional and sort of macro level have to play a critical role. So, those who run private sector companies who are, patting their backs at 25, 30% gender parity in their companies, they have to change the way they run. From our, speaking of Jamison and cultural work, we can't be having the objectification of women in every song, every movie, every dance that's out there. We need to be able to change that, right? At the macro level, as we found with the president of Iceland, who has declared the gender pay gap illegal in Iceland, if we can mobilize, as we are working to mobilize, those who lead these institutions, traditional leaders, we have a coalition, a council of traditional leaders across Africa who are working to annul child marriages, who are changing the normalization of female genital mutilation, So the idea is not for us as women who are all in agreement about this, and the few men who walk with us, to continue to shout from rooftops. But it's about shifting where the responsibility for gender equality is and putting it squarely in the hands of those who control it and who can make the change. This is why you hear President Ramaphosa speak about it all the time. Women went to him and said to him, it's your business, not somebody else's, right? Preetesh, it's your business, not somebody else's. Yeah. So for every single institutional space, whether it's a church or it's a music band or it's a corporate, the responsibility lies squarely with, in particular, the men at the top. And that's why we've been having this He for She campaign, which we now need to drive even harder, because we need men to be at the forefront of this. So is it possible? Of course it's possible. Are we likely to do it? I mean, it depends a lot on the kind of work that we do. And your point about Women's Month is not the only time that we need to be having this conversation. In fact, Preetesh, the next conversation that you have, don't have any women on there. Just talk to men. This is my invitation to you. Just have a conversation with men who have the power to change decisions everywhere they are, and ask them what they're doing. Show them, ask them, let's follow the money. Let's follow the decisions they're making. Let's follow their companies and see exactly where the change is. Then we will know whether this is possible in our lifetime or in the next 9 years.
Absolutely, and such inspiring words. And you're so right, because one of the things that's always troubled me, and I always highlight this, is whenever there's an event that happens and it's titled gender equality or women's rights or anything with that, and you go to that event back when we were in the physical world and you look at the room and it's all women. It's all women. Men do not attend. And I go, one of the things we need to absolutely understand is men need to take ownership and they need to make strong statements. One of the things that I've said on record is that when I leave the Loeries, I recognize that my job is to ensure that I can find the right woman to take over from me. That's what it's going to be. And that's what's going to be. There's never been a woman leader at the Loeries in, as far as I know, and I need to go back and check, as far as I know, at least in the recent history, there has not been a woman leader at the Loeries. We need to change it. And we need to say it in platforms like this, because now I've got everyone on this who will hold me accountable. And we need other men to do the same thing. Absolutely. In fact, if I read a comment from Monsieur Shlangwa, who says, I'm a trans woman from Johannesburg. I'm a beneficiary of some of Anne's policy work. It's great to see her participating on this panel. And you can see there's already work being done, your work's resonating already. Lerato, I've seen you shaking your head quite a bit, quite vigorously, as Anne has been sharing all of this. So tell me, when you look at society and we look at the state of our society today, what are your thoughts?
So, I loved everything Anne was saying. And I want to answer something that you asked Anne about, like, do you think that 9 years is enough time? And I think the reason why we're here is because in 1956, there's a group of women who decided, we are tired. We do not want this anymore for ourselves. We, on the 9th of August, are going to walk. And these women agreed, right? They were like, whether you are colored, you are white, you are black, your problem is my problem. And so that decision that they took that day, they could have taken it in, 5 years before, then 5 years after, but it's about making that decision right now to change yourself. And I think that's where, honestly, for me, where change starts. It starts with you as a person. And I think the reason why you don't have a lot of men attending gender seminars or whatever is because men haven't been gendered. It's like most white people haven't been raised. So if you don't live within your gender, if you don't walk in spaces where you're reminded of your gender in the same way that you're not reminded of your race, it really becomes a non-issue for you. It becomes those people's issues. Like, that's, oh, race, oh no, I like, my parents took the helpers' kids to school. So, like, no, of course, there's no problem with racism. Oh, I have 3 girls. I'm a father of 3 girls. There's absolutely no. And the problem is, it is in how we speak. It is. I had a partner who used to tell his son, "Don't be a girl," and so it is your language that, first of all, is a problem, because the thing that he's saying is that women are weak. And so this little boy must grow up not to be like that. And so when this little boy then becomes a man and sees Andrea, who's a vice president of a marketing global company next to him, he's like, well,
that was so powerful. And one of the amazing things I think is like there's always tech problems. It always happens, but Lerato should jump in a bit. But based on what Lerato is saying, Andrea, as well, I mean, I was just thinking as Lerato was actually chatting, and she had made such a valid point about, that most men have not lived in their gender, which is absolutely true, in the same way as she made the race statements as well. Because I remember hearing a statement many, many years ago that really stuck with me, and it went, it's always easier to wake up somebody who's genuinely asleep than somebody who's pretending to be asleep. And it's a profound statement. And I think sometimes with a lot of men, and as a man, I can openly say this, there's a lot of men who are pretending that, we support the causes and we support the initiatives that need to happen to bring the equality that needs to happen in society. But in truth, because they have the sense of almost like, I'm doing enough, I'm doing what I need to do. In truth, when you have the real issues, they're not really exposed to that. Would you say this is a fair statement, or do you have a different take on this?
And I'm so glad that you asked this particular question, because and in the same way that Anne and Lerato said, I'm a feminist of note. Like, don't cross me with with a comment like, oh, don't act like a girl, or whatever. That is absolutely unacceptable. Interestingly, in my career, the most support I have had is from men, and not from women. And I'm not too sure why. I think sometimes women in the corporate environment, senior women in the corporate environment, are struggling to keep their heads above water, and at times are not doing what they have to do, which is really, as Anne was saying, change the dynamics. You've got the power. Make sure that you're looking at people's salaries and you're asking HR to compare a woman's salary with the man's salary. So like doing stuff like that. And I'll give you a very specific example. It was probably about 8 years ago. I was feeling totally out of my depth. And I remember going to my boss then and saying, I need to resign because I need work-life balance. And he said to me, so explain to me what this work-life balance thing is that you're looking after. And I said, well, actually, I just really want to be able to have dinner with my family, with my kids. I have 2 young kids then. And he was like, well, so he helped me break down my total level of, despair and stress into something really actionable. And he was like, well, then leave early. Don't come in on Wednesdays. He gave me half a day off or a day off on Wednesdays. So in my career, I have had so much more support in terms of people backing me, people pushing for my promotions from men than I've had from women, that my calling was to disprove that. My calling was to make sure that when I became senior, when I had the power to make the changes, that I was fighting for women and I was fighting for Black people. So I think we all have different experiences. I think at a macro level, of course, it is, the men that have to, it is the men that have the, most powerful positions, that have to, kind of back us and have to change things, especially at home. If you grew up with a father that treated your mother as a second-class citizen, you're going to play that out in some way. You're going to either play that out subconsciously, or you're going to play it out, in a very overt way. So in the work environment, we're dealing with a lot more than what happens at work. And there's a certain aggression that men show that they bring to work as well. I will never forget being like a recently appointed manager and being shouted at by a senior man. You know, women, we all go through these type of things. And I think often sometimes women will say, well, because it happened to me, the ones that are coming after me must just toughen up and accept it. No, it is our responsibility to change things so that the women that come after us don't have to go through what we went through. So that's just my personal experience.
No, completely agree. And Lerato, sorry, you are in the middle of an amazing point when technical issues always. But I mean, do you still remember? Would you like to carry on that point? Yeah.
Yes. And thanks to everybody else. And I see that there was also somebody who's saying they agree with Andrea about, they relate to Andrea having been sponsored by men. So what I was trying to say is exactly what Andrea is saying, is that it starts on a micro level with you as a human being, how you raise your children, the kind of language that you use. And the moment you are able to be conscious of what you're unconscious of, and I think a lot of people in boardrooms are unconsciously biased. So they'll tell very sexist jokes because like, oh, it's just like, it's a thing, you know, it's like, come on, Lerato, relax. Like, it's not that serious, right? And so if you start to be conscious of what you're unconscious of on a micro level yourself, you'll be able to change an organization. You'll be able to change your own family, how people relate to each other in the house. And that becomes the community, which then becomes the organization. But I think for me, the number one thing that I feel we need to think about also is how we empower women to be able to speak up. Andrea said she asked her boss, I want work-life balance. And all the research we looked at, almost everybody since COVID started has been saying, particularly women, I'm finding it hard to balance my career with my personal life. And so what we've done, and I love America a lot. I have best friends there, I studied there. But if you think about the work, the number of hours that we work now, they were developed by Henry Ford in 1903 because he needed to measure how people would work, factory workers, right? Before emails, before even the telephone. And I'm analog. I'm still that 80s born. And the systems we have now are old systems. They're systems not based on people getting emails on their cell phones, people now not working just solely from home, but from home, from work, and everywhere. And so we need to change, we need to do it quickly. And if the UN says it's 9 years, and we all say it's going to be 9 years, it is going to be 9 years, because it is to everybody's benefit that women are not only put at the table, that they have a voice at the table. You know Ahmed Tilly very well. He's a wonderful person. I interviewed him earlier this year. He said it's not enough to have people at the table. So it's not enough to have diversity. If the people cannot speak up, if people cannot feel like they are included in the decisions they're making, whether of the organization or of the house, then there's a problem. So the first thing I want to mention is that let's empower women to say what they want, to negotiate for the money that they want, because you know what? We can kick the door in if you want to take forever. In this 9 years, I really believe, whether it's women from Kenya, or women from Nigeria or South Africa, anywhere else around the world, I think we're going to be able to do it, but we can't do it without you men as our allies, and you men beginning to change your way you see yourself and look at gender not as a woman's issue, but a societal issue.
Agree. It's a human rights issue. And one of the things that I love that you spoke about as well is just in terms of workplace structures, and that we've adopted this. I mean, if you look on screen right now, what you're looking at is this was the Industrial Revolution, and this is how people worked in the Industrial Revolution. You sat and you did these tiny little tasks, and this is us today. I mean, pre-COVID, obviously, but we're going to go back to this. And unfortunately, what happens is, as we continue taking the same structures, the same thinking, it's not just the physical structures, but it's the mental structures that we have in the work environment that we take with us. we're going to end up with a situation where we carry that inequality that's existed from the past. I mean, and maybe having a look at you on this as well. Thinking about the challenges that we've had in the past and the structures that have been in place, what are some of the ways that we can actually break down some of the challenges in the workplace and the workplace structures that promote inequality?
Well, as you know, we have this famous women empowerment principles that we put in place for every single company. And this is something that we've been trying to promote within companies. And it's about how to think about how to have a sort of comprehensive, progressive workplace where, you know, inclusivity and equality is embraced. And so it has these 7 principles. And these 7 principles are, you know, starting at the gender parity point where, you know, we're not even talking about the 30% club, we're talking about the 50% club. And to what extent can we have as many women in all kinds of senior positions as possible? We've got data that shows us that where there are women, you know, at about 50% in the company or at a minimum of 30%, then the companies actually produce higher revenues. And do better, as Andrea was saying earlier. And I do think, Andrea, to your point about the sponsorship of men more than women, in truth, women have been brought in leadership positions in dribs and drabs, and they're basically trying to survive and keep their heads up. And are also, in many instances, modeling male leadership because that's all they've ever known and seen. But what we're seeing as gender parity grows in companies is that women are more relaxed about being their same feminine selves. They can be there, they can be nurturing, they can be emotional, they can be whoever they want to be in the workplace, and they're not questioned because they're able to change the culture of what the leadership looks like. But if you're 1 or 2 women, it's impossible to do that, and you're struggling to even keep your head up because you don't even, you know, it's a survival game, right? The second one is really looking at what are the workplace policies, you know, how are you looking at equity properly? So this is where the gender pay gap fits in. What about parental leave? You know, we have something that we call the motherhood penalty. And we find that in many instances, women are not able, and it influences the gender pay gap because women are brought in at lower level jobs in general. They take time off to have children, you know, and they, you know, like negotiation skills, all of that. And so Andrea enters at this high level position that she is at Coca-Cola now, and they ask you for your pay history. And your pay history has had a slow sort of growth path, unlike the man who's been there, being called assertive and confident and somehow growing, while the woman is taking time off to look after her children, et cetera, et cetera. And Andrea comes in at a lower level because somehow she didn't negotiate it right. You know, and so even then it's the burden is put on her. So part of this is about saying this whole equal pay and equality in the workplace has to be defined as equal. If I come in at a particular level, I'm remunerated for that level. It has nothing to do with my pay history. It has to do with the level at which that job needs to be remunerated. So this is the kind of thinking. Violence and harassment in the workplace, commonplace now. We've had to set up a new convention globally from the ILO, a convention on violence and harassment in the world of work. I'm sure if you ask Andrea, you ask Lerato, we will give you examples of the kind of harassment each of us has experienced. And the harassment does not have to be, you know, outright harassment, but it's subtle. Sometimes it's just a look. Sometimes it's a, you know, an energy that, you know, this energy is out of place, right? And before and until now, we couldn't call that out because then, you know, you're spoiling all the fun, you know, life has changed. I can't even, you know, recognize you for being beautiful, all this kind of stuff. Hey, listen, the rules have changed. These are the rules and this is what it is now. You want to help me tie my shoelace? Ask me first, right? Because you have not known how to behave, and because you've had the power, you can influence how I grow, my performance, etc., just by the way you look at me. Right? So that becomes something else that we're changing. So that's another principle. The other principle is about equity. If we really want to have 50% women up at the top, then the company has got to invest in women and fast tracking them throughout the system to be able to move at the pace that men are moving, to be able to actually reach there. So not only do you have the policy there, but you also do the investment to make sure that you're doing the, making sure that you're continuously creating this. So the sponsorship, the mentorship, that has to be done deliberately to bring more women up. Then the fifth one for me, and this is where the money hits the mouth. Money is where the mouth is, right? So the real story comes here. And when we look at all the reports and the annual reports of companies, we see parity, we see statements about gender equality. Then we look at who you buy from. Who do you buy your goods and services from? Your company's revenue is 70, 30, 50, 100 billion. But how many women are benefiting from your business? Maybe they're 50. How much of it is it? Barely 2% of your actual procurement comes from women. Why? Because it's easier to do business with the old boys club with whom you've always done business with. You're hanging out at the golf club, you're hanging out at the bars. We don't even understand your language. We don't, and so you're not seeking us out. You don't care about that. So this is what happens. So if you are talking about a change business, we want to see the numbers. Show us the numbers. The second one of parts of this is about your marketing. Are you objectifying women? And Stereotype Alliance, and Andrea, I'm so happy you're where you are because we need you on board quick. Pritesh, get the work going, let's go. Let's get Andrea on board. So we need Stereotype Alliance, all of these companies to join us so that we really start working with our CMOs and those who shape ads. You remember the drama last year about the hair. We cannot afford to have this racist, sexist, objectifying, anti-equality, homophobic stereotypes on the table. That's not who we are. And actually, when you are more equal and more open and more inclusive in your ads, your companies do better. So that's principle 5. And then 6 really is about your social responsibility work. And one of the things I keep saying is, if you decide that I'm going to invest in, we're buying from women-owned companies, use your corporate social investment to invest in the women businesses so that they can actually supply you. Don't make it a small little thing that's peripheral, that's cute to do, that's full of banners and balloons during Women's Month, and then you shut up for the other 11 months. No, make it count. Make it count in significant ways, and then report on this. Your sustainability reports have got to tell us what you're doing and where you're putting your money in these companies. Those are the 7 principles. And if we follow these, we can really see transformed companies. And there are some who are taking this up, but there's a lot who are still lagging and sort of ticking the box in tokenism and so on. So that's the story.
I completely agree. And you're so right, Anne. It's not really about sentiment anymore. We need to move away from sentiment and what we want to do and what we're planning to do in this year. It really needs to be a report back in terms of this is what we've done. It was so interesting. I was, and Andrea, you'll probably find this question interesting. So as we were preparing and getting on board for the chat we're having today, yesterday I came across an article. So it's a newspaper article, not going to say much, and it was just about the richest South Africans on the JSE. And, sometimes you need to even interrogate and have a look at it. And if anyone wants, you can go and have a look at this. But I looked at this entire article of the richest South Africans on the JSE, the people who are really controlling the economy and various countries and all of this. And there was not a single woman, not one. Out of 18 names on the list, not a single woman. And we speak about this pay gap and getting the pay right. But it's also not just about pay right, it's about equity. And that's what I think lots of people forget about, is that you can get paid a certain salary, and it's a really nice salary. But if your organization is given equity and ownership in the organization to individuals, women need to get a fair share of that ownership so that they can build wealth. And Andrea, what are your thoughts on this, on building real wealth through equity?
I mean, obviously that also means that you've got skin in the game, and that also means that you can really change the direction of the organization. You go beyond being an employee, or you go beyond just buying products and services from the company, but you go to owning it. And as soon as you start owning something, then you have a lot more power. So, so it is something that is extremely important in terms of making sure that we are able to shape the direction and the focus in which companies goes.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to read some of the comments as well, just to acknowledge all of the amazing contribution that's coming from our audience as well. Maybe a few points back, Andrea, but Giovanna Harku says, Andrea, I can so relate. My greatest sponsors in the boardroom have been men, and specifically Afrikaans men. As a brown girl, this was totally inconceivable until it happened to me. I see a partner also on the journey to convert from within. Monsieur Shlonge says, to each panelist, there's an obvious gap in terms of gender equality globally. What do you imagine? So here comes a question. What do you imagine to be the reason for the lack of visible transformation? And maybe let's stop it there before I go through the next questions. I mean, Lerato, why are we not seeing this? You know, we've had this chat where Anne's already highlighting that we need to go from a point of pure sentiment to actual action. But we've been told about this, but why do you think there's this lack of genuine, visible transformation that comes from a place of real feeling rather than just something that's done to tick boxes at corporations?
So I think, I think that the thing about it is for us to also remember that most systems that we live in the world are based on power, right? So you need to have a power of some sort over someone or something. There is a sense about human beings of wanting to control. And there is difficulty and there's fear once you tell people to let go, not necessarily to relinquish power completely, but just to let go. And I think that's one of the reasons why is that anytime people are in power, it is very difficult to imagine what the change means for me. Right? So the change for me as a man means that there's certain things I'm not going to be able to get away with. For instance, if me and my wife are working equally as hard, making just as much, I might actually need to come with something more than just the paycheck. And I go to interpersonal relationships because those spill over into the workplace. And if you think about the fact that in America and in Europe, women make up less than 55%, they make up less than 5% of the C-suite. That's incredible. That's unbelievable that would be happening now. And I think it's just, you see it now with certain people who love to hold on to their whiteness, because you can be white without being your race. So I need to make that distinction so that you're not sharing a blanket statement about white people. It's the same thing where there are people who are struggling to let go of the benefits, and there are benefits to being superior, whether that benefit is earning more money, whether that benefit is not being seen as somebody who's less than, not being othered. My goodness, everybody wants to not be othered. So I think that's one of the main reasons we're not seeing transformation, is that, and in gender equality in particular, inequality in particular, is because everybody thinks of themselves and gets threatened as opposed to the organism that is the human race. And right now, the human race, our immune system is very compromised. And unless we fix it, we have a huge problem.
I think one of the ways we obviously need to fix it in terms of changing our mindsets, changing the way we work, but one of the key areas as well, and I just want to take a step back to something that we spoke about, because I think this is an area where Andrea could give us some advice on, is this pay gap and getting this pay gap correct. Because, we've had this discussion about, if you come into a job, you need to be paid for that role, not based on your past payment history. But how do we do this? Andrea, how do we ensure, we don't know what the previous person was paying. I mean, I can tell you from a personal, when I came into Loeries, I didn't know what the previous person was being paid, and I didn't negotiate in that. We look at a certain thing, and it's only later on that I find out that data and that information. It's the same for every person. And in most cases, most women who come into a role are very unlikely to ever know truly what the person prior to them was being paid. So how do you tackle that? How do you ensure you're being paid a fair wage and not one that you're just accepting and being happy with, but is generally one that is setting you back versus what your male counterpart would have achieved?
My gosh, that is something that I probably still struggle with, but I'll tell you, I have quite a history about how much I've been paid. The first experience I had was when I found out that my colleague, who was doing exactly the same job as me, but the big difference was that he was a tall, white Dutch guy, was earning twice as much as me. So you talk about a pay gap being 20 to 35%. I was earning 50% of what this dude earned.
Wow.
I was still young, and I got angry and I resigned. That was my solution to the problem. I went and I worked for another company, and then I came back because actually I really liked the company. And then it happened to me again. There was some English boy that had come, and I remember that time he was earning R1 million, and I was running one of the biggest brands in South Africa. I delivered some of the best results the company had delivered. And some guy who was like doing some sort of support function was earning R1 million, and I was earning 700,000 rands. This time round, I confronted. And I went to my boss, this same boss, and I said to him, why is it that this guy is earning this amount and I am earning this amount? And this is what I have delivered. So the fact that I was a woman was the only differential. My results were better, my position was higher, and yet I was earning less. And what they did was they changed it, which was a good thing. And then as soon as I got into a position where I was senior enough and where I had control over what people earned, and we had pay increase time, or we had what's it called, bonus time, I always asked for a comparison between men, women, black, white. I always asked for a comparison, and what were the outliers and why are there these outliers? And we would adjust with that lens. So I think the first thing is having the courage to say that. And I find, and I think different people say it differently. I tend to try and charm. So I will go in and I will literally say, I know I'm a woman, I know I'm black, and I know I've delivered great results. Whatever happens, please don't make me an offer that is less than a man in the same position. So I bring awareness to the table. And I just make it an open thing. And I feel uncomfortable negotiating money. I have a funny relationship with money, kind of growing up, not having enough, trying to hide that you didn't have enough money. So like
most women do, don't worry, most women do. That's why lean in is such a big thing.
Huh? Sorry?
I said most women do. This is why lean in is such a big thing.
Yes. So, yeah. So I know that. So what I do is I'm totally transparent, and then I put it back on them, and I say to them, make sure that is. And when the offer comes, I'll say, have you checked? And is this in line? And then we have a conversation. But you've got to be transparent, and obviously there are power dynamics, right? Because you're wanting the job, so you can't go in there and start throwing your toys because you might not get what you want. I often say start with the end in mind, and the end in mind is making sure that you're paid relatively well compared to, or you're paid at the same as people that do the same job as you. But secondly is you've got to keep a relationship with this person that's hiring you. You know, so you've got to be very careful about how you confront it, and that you're not saying it in such a way that the other person feels like you're insulting them or you're assuming that they won't do good by you. So you've got to think about how you approach it so that you get what you want, and what you want is equal pay. So that's my approach.
I think that's good advice. And for anyone who might need a recap of that, because I mean, there's so many amazing points and I was just jotting down notes. The reality of what you got to do is I guess at the recruitment stage, ask for a comparison to make sure benchmark versus other people in the role. So at recruitment, at that point, in a very friendly way, and ensure that it's on the table right at the beginning in terms of what your expectation is. So it becomes really about setting the benchmark as to what the company has already established, rather than necessarily going and saying, judging me, and then you're now going to decide to pay me a little less. I got one question, Andrea, coming on for that. When you were able to negotiate from your 700,000 rands to the million to be on the same kind of level, did the person you chat to, your direct manager or HR or whoever else, did they tell you, because I've heard this in the past, did they tell you, we're giving this to you now, but we're not able to relook your salary again at the next point milestone for a salary increase? So if they gave this to you in August, they went, normally we do salary increases in January, but since we gave this to you now in August, in January you won't get a pay increase. Did you hear that?
No, when you're talking about equality, I didn't get that back.
Great.
I think when you go in and you're asking for a pay raise because you believe you're worth more or whatever, you might get that back. But if you're saying that you're underpaying me versus the norm, they can't bring that back to you. I mean, so I didn't get that experience. And I think it depends on what your approach is. If it is, I need a raise because my car's broken down and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you're coming from a position of weakness. But if you're coming and you're saying, well, why is it that? And the things that people talk about money, right? People talk about how much they earn and everything. So I listen. If you're talking about comparing and showing your value, because at the end of the day, don't pay me more because you like me. Pay me more because I'm doing a job that is adding value and that is significant. And it's either on par with this dude or higher. I have no problems with somebody at a level higher earning more than me. I have no problems with that.
No, that's
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Andrea.
Yeah. No, and I mean the other funny thing is, I remember I had somebody that worked for me that earned more than me, and I didn't have a problem with that because this person had been in the company for 36 years.
Oh.
He'd been in the company for 36 years and he was still doing extremely well, but he just kept moving from position to position. And at some point, he came to my team from another team and he earned more than me. And he didn't earn more than me because he was a man. He earned more than me because he'd been around for 36 years and each year he got an increase, and I'd been around for 16 years. So I did the calculations and I understood it.
Okay, amazing. Yeah. So I guess it's also a sense of being able to apply your mind to the situation and see what's fair. If it's a sense that you're being unfairly treated, absolutely fight for it and bring it up and highlight it. But sometimes within that, you will find anomalies, as you found, Andrea. And if you have anomalies, then I guess you have to accept it. But I guess let's have a look at some of the comments. So I'm so sorry, everyone, that I haven't been reading it. This conversation's been amazing, but I'll try and get through a few. Eve Sal says, as women, we were told that we lack education. And as women, we left our kids and defied those odds and empowered themselves. We're still being told we are not enough. I mean, Anne, coming back to you as well, this is a really, really powerful statement in terms of kids. Again, we've discussed this. But within the working situation, in terms of equal rights and empowerment, what is some of the lessons that are coming out of UNWomen in terms of best ways for organizations to treat women as they go through this process, and how do we ensure a sense of equality as women come back to work? I've heard horror stories of people having their jobs guaranteed purely because that's the law, but coming back and being put into a death spiral where it's not easy for them to stay in the organization. They eventually have to leave. I've heard of women being discriminated against because they have they have kids who are breastfeeding and who are sick and need to be in a home environment. But there's a sense and a need of equality in the workplace to also recognize that we need to be fair to women especially in cases like this, especially at points when starting families, taking care of a young family? Thoughts from your side?
Well, I think there's two things that play out in this space. The one is, what is the policy within the organization? And the other one is, what is the actual practice, right? And like I said, when we did our review of Beijing, one of the things we found was that norms and stereotypes were actually the real big things that need to be dealt with in order to change the game for gender equality. So it's one thing to have the policies, like South Africa has the Bill of Rights and we've got all kinds of great constitution, but it's how it's translated that becomes the real thing. So one of the big things that we are promoting and have been promoting as UNWomen is parental leave. And this is important. More and more, it's important that men are also taking responsibility for the child that is born, and that workplaces are giving men the time off to also take care of the child, so that the child doesn't grow up believing that it's only my mother that really matters, is the only parent. This is not about the man washing the dishes. It's way more than that. This is about saying, this is a shared responsibility. In some countries that have started this work years before, for them with parental leave is given to a couple, right? And so the couple shares the time. So you're given, say, a year of parental leave or 8 months of parental leave, and then it's distributed, but there's a minimum time for each one. So say it's a year, but a minimum of 4 months for each one, so that the time is distributed and shared. So that's obviously the goal that we're looking for, where we can get to a place with parental leave where men will also start, part of the challenge we have even with this equal pay, and therefore with this parental leave, is that there is a sort of norm or belief in our organizations that the man is the breadwinner, the woman is supplementing, right? So it kind of comes with, and I mean, why should we, So yes, of course she's going to have children and so on and so forth, and that's okay, because really the breadwinner is on the table and she's merely supplementing, right? Somehow they miss the statistics about South Africa being over 60% single headed households, right? But that's the kind of mindset that has shaped and framed our HR policies in many contexts. Right? So you've got these kind of social norms that make assumptions about where women sit within an organization, and therefore what happens, and she is going to give birth, and when she gives birth, when she's pregnant. I mean, I was pregnant over a period of 7 years, 3 times. And, I remember a boss at the time saying to me, I mean, who's throwing around fertilizer in this place, wondering, saying to me at some point that, how are we going to do this kind of work because of, your fragility, right? And I remember having to stand in front of him one day, stomach out, and I looked at him and I said, I am pregnant. I am not fragile, neither am I sick. Come with me, let's run this marathon and let's see who of you and me is going to do better. Because, I was just disgusted. For one thing, I was fine. I mean, of course, there are those women who have sickly pregnancies, but I was completely strong all the way, actually, and I was able to do what I needed to do the whole way. So, there has to be quite a bit of work that recognizes that the role that a woman plays in childbirth is actually not something she's doing out of her weakness. This is a significant contribution to society. And so this is how we couch this parental leave that we're trying to get companies to embrace, so that they're beginning to look at this with a different mindset and are taking responsibility. Of course, we know South Africa is a long way away from that, but there are discussions right now in the country about parental leave. So it will come, and it is coming soon, along with all this new thinking. So it's really about focusing on changing culture in the same way that we have worked on diversity and inclusion in terms of race. We know we're not there yet, but at least these are conversations on the table. So we have to have the conversations on the table about the fact that when a woman is pregnant, that actually this is a contribution to society and we have to be aligned. But it does take work, because these are sort of cultural issues. And, you know, Jamson can talk about, I don't know what cultural work you do at the embassy, but these are some of the interesting things that have to happen, is that cultural diversity has to be about changing some of these norms and practices. It's not an easy one, but it is one that has to be pushed. And the policy has to be able to say that the motherhood, what we call the motherhood penalty, in fact, we've discussed costing that. We have to cost out motherhood penalty. When a woman gets pregnant and she's in the world of work, she should be compensated for that, actually. Mm-hmm. You should be compensated for that rather than the other way, right? If you are rejected from a job because you are pregnant, if you're not offered a job because you're pregnant, that is discrimination. And that needs to be dealt with as discrimination. So these are the policies that need to become strong, so that an employer does not have the option to opt out because a person is pregnant, or to discriminate because a woman is, you know, breastfeeding at work or needing to take time off because of a sick child. I think, and I'm hopeful that COVID, in our new way of work, will change some of that, because we now are able to, you know, we know now that we can work from home comfortably. And most progressive companies are now coming up with policies where people don't, you know, especially mothers of young children, you never have to go back to the office, actually. Mm-hmm. You can work in this way forever.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree, Anne, with you. I think one of the key things we need to change this mindset in society is that a man's career takes precedence within the family unit. And I think in society, and you'll hear it. I mean, I hear it out in any times as well. And maybe it's because some of the chats we've had, I now cringe in it, but it's always a sense of, you know, where you're going with your career, how's that going to impact your family? And it's never about my wife and her career, which is a rich, fulfilling career, and the impact that her career is going to have in our family as well, and how I can support in her career. So this is obviously one of the challenges that we have in society. Andrea?
Yeah. Preetesh, I mean, just to jump in here, and I think as society, we reinforce that. In my previous role, I used to get interviewed a lot. And the first question that they would ask me is, how do I balance my family life with my work life? That's a question that has never been asked of my husband. My husband is a CEO in some insurance company, but nobody asks a man those type of questions. And it's those little things that reinforce this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy and the expectation that society has over us. So it's little stuff like that. And I think people in the media need to be trained not to ask those type of questions. Or if they do, they must ask the men as well.
Absolutely agree, Lerato. As we, believe it or not, we have our last 6 minutes, but Lerato, if I can hand over to you.
Yes, thanks. I actually wanted to use these last couple of minutes to say something. I would be remiss if I didn't actually say this. I think one of the biggest problems we have in the workplace in South Africa, by the way, also harassed. And the thing that was interesting about me being sexually harassed was that before I was harassed, I thought I would react in a particular way. I thought I would be like, oh, how dare you? And actually, women, when you find yourself in that situation, and spoke about it, where it's like a microaggression, it's not a clear thing, I didn't know how to react. I was like, was it me? Was my skirt? And this person was of a, you know what I mean? They were sort of CEO, and I was so uncomfortable, and my reaction both saddened me and disappointed me, because imagine all he did was just touch a body part. Imagine other women who've had something worse than that. So I think that never assume that you're going to act in a particular way, and try and find women around you who will help you. But what I wanted to say is, one of the things that's fundamentally wrong about the workplace, particularly in South Africa, is that we have the same kind of person doing the same kind of job. So I think it was Aziz who was saying, Aziz is doing work, sexual harassment work in Nigeria. So when I worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we went to Kenya, and it was South African women, Nigerian women, and Kenyan women. And what we found was that while our issues were different, everything had a thread, and that was women wanting to have agency over their bodies and what that does to society. And I think the issue is that you will have a transgender woman being raped, and yet the same guy who's handling the robbery, handling the same kind of cases, is handling a rape case. So I think it's very important for us to think about who is taking care, who is working in what situation, and are they equipped for that? So if you have an ad agency, what kind of people do you have? Is there, because ad agencies, we drink on a Friday, it's relaxed. So you need an HR person that will allow a woman who might get sexually harassed to say something, as opposed to a man who might not understand. So there's something to be said about who is in the position and are they right to take care of those people. And secondly, let's think about job descriptions, right? Let's think about job descriptions that affirm gender inequality. So be clear when you are writing a job description that it's one for a man or a woman, whether that woman is a transgender woman or not. So I think those things are important because it starts there. It starts with who's in what position and what questions are they asking, to AQ's point. Are they equipped to do this? And if they're not, how can we move it forward? And who can we get who's more right for the role? Because we're not there yet. We're really not there yet.
That's amazing advice. And I think in that spirit of advice, Lerato, and as we close off, any advice from your side, something practical that we can do as men or as women to ensure that we go into this gender equality journey in the workplace together to ensure we create real change?
I think the first thing I'd like to say is what I said before, and I just want to reiterate it. Preetesh, your next conversation needs to be with men. I think that we're not having enough conversations with men, and it's not to shout at men and tell men off, but it's for men to know and understand what is their power and position and responsibility in changing gender equality. It is not my business as a woman to create the change for myself. It's like talking to Black people to change their racism context. It doesn't make sense. This is something that has to be put squarely in the place of those who perpetrate and perpetuate the discrimination. So I think for me, if there's a message that I would like to shout loud and clear, is to really have these more and more conversations with men. So next Women's Month, don't have women's panels, have men's panels. Let men have this conversation. We can sit and ask the questions and we can be there and probe. We can be the facilitators, but let the men have conversations amongst themselves more and more. I also want to just reiterate my point about the women empowerment principles. Don't do one thing in your company and celebrate your gender equality work. No, you have got to work deeply within that company across all of those areas. Sign up, yes. So Andrea, sign up, please. Women Empowerment Principles and Stereotype Alliance, sign up and then do the work across all the different levels that I talked about. All of this, parental leave, dealing with the motherhood penalty, dealing with the equal pay, buying from women, all of those things that I talked about. And you can go to weps.org, weps.org, and it will share the whole framework for you. Sign up there and just do it. And for the advertising world, for the marketing and creative world, the Stereotype Alliance is a wonderful world for you to join. Lerato, please come and let's join in with Andrea and let's look at how to really change this game. We need the CMOs to really drive different change. If we put all the energy behind the creatives in this country, we can change the mindsets of men who are generally perpetrators of violence. There are no pictures, there's no real work out there in the advertising space that is showing them how bad their behavior is, how wrong it is, how abnormal the normal is. I mean, there is some work, but it's not anywhere near enough. So we need to do that work as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I absolutely agree. We need more men involved, and let's not wait till next Women's Month 2022. This needs to happen. As you said, the reason we're doing this is to keep the conversation going. This needs to happen now. tomorrow, this week, next week. Let's continue that and we'll find a way to make it happen. Thank you so much for that. And Andrea, final thoughts from your side and some action points. What can we do to ensure that we can bring the equality we need in the workplace?
Yeah, well, I'll definitely be joining the Unstereotype Alliance and the WEP. My advice to everyone is don't be apologetic. Use the tools you have to make a difference. And when I say the tools you have, I'm talking about the tools that you personally have, the talents that you have, but also we all work for, some of us work for organizations that are larger than us. So use your brands to do the good work as well, because that really counts. So that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Just to remind everyone, Andrea Quaye, Senior Director and Global Category Lead Coffee at the Coca-Cola Company, and Githuku-Shongwe, who's the representative for UNWomen's South Africa Multi-Country Office, and Lerato Tshabalala, author, Executive Creative Director, and 2014 Mandela Washington Fellow. Thank you to the three of you for joining. I am going to, so we're not leaving just yet, I would like to invite Jameson onto the call again to help us round off. Jameson, your thoughts on the conversation that we've been having so far for the last 90 minutes. Time flies. I cannot believe that was 90 minutes.
Indeed. I was listening to the whole thing, and I think what we can accomplish in an event like this, we have bringing together really stars who touch on so many different areas of this topic and this subject matter, both through their lived experience as well as what they are doing in their professional and personal lives. It just, for me, brings up kind of one quote from Vice President Kamala Harris, as many of you know, the first woman to serve in that distinguished role within the United States government, as the number 2 person in our U.S. government. And she said, if we do not lift up women and families, everyone will fall short, right? And I think what you heard here is 3 distinguished voices really speaking to what that means, right? If it's not happening in the boardroom, that company's not as successful as it could be, right? If it's not happening in the home, as Lerato spoke to, it can spill over into the boardroom, it can spill over into the work environment, it could spill over into schools and other places, right? So all of these issues are so intertwined, and thank you for the invitation. That's what we try to do with our cultural programming, right? Is we try to build those bridges, to build those connections, those people-to-people ties that outlast governments, that outlast our lifetimes, right? To Lerato's point about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation statistics. If it takes 108 years, it might take 108 years. However, we have to see the forest for the trees and know that in our lifetime, in our time here, we can move that dial, right? So I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to the questions that we received from the participants and the comments too. It was very active, and it was great to watch that and see that unfold. And thank you again to the panelists and to Preetesh and the Loeries team for really helping us make this happen together with the American Corner Pretoria. Thank you.
Amazing. Jameson DeBose, Acting Cultural Affairs Attaché at the US Embassy in South Africa. Thank you so much for your remarks. Thank you to you, to Nomakawe and the entire team for supporting this initiative and inspiring this initiative. Also, to everyone on the call, it's so great having all of you. Apologies if I didn't get to go through your questions or comments. There are just so many, so thank you for keeping the conversation going. Just a reminder, if you don't know where to find it, you don't know what it looks like, this is the Facebook page for the American Corner Pretoria. That's at ACP Pretoria. And as you can see, our conversation is even happening live throughout this as well. Amazing resources on this page and lots of information about all of the amazing work being done by ACP, American Corner Pretoria. And here's our guest as well in the chat that we had today. So please feel free to go through, find out more information about the work that's being done by the US Embassy in South Africa, including the Yali Network, which is also a fantastic initiative, and the Mandela Washington Fellowship, which is open for for applications right now. And I think it's one of those opportunities that I feel terribly sad that I'm too old for and wish I could have gone for. So I'm so jealous, Lerato. I think it must have been, I'm sure it's a life-changing opportunity. Amazing. Once again.
Amazing. Life-changing.
Well done, Preetesh. You're such a star.
Great. It was phenomenal.
Oh, amazing.
Yay!
Oh, brilliant. Lerato, thank you so much. We appreciate you so much. And, we love you to bits, and you do amazing work with the Unstereotype Alliance. Thank you for allowing me to be part of the work that you're doing. Andrea, as I always tell Andrea, I'm so sad she left the Loeries just as I was coming in. I'd love to find excuses for us to do more together. And this is just the start. In Jameson, so good meeting you. Thank you for all of the amazing work you're doing. And thank you to everyone that joined us. We couldn't go through all the questions. There was a question in terms of how do you actually get a recording of this? It's live right now on the American Corner Pretoria Facebook page. So if you want to catch up on this conversation, please go there, have a look at it. It will also appear on the US Embassy's YouTube page, the Loeries YouTube page. So have a look at it. But if you want it right now and you want to go through some of the amazing comments, please feel free to go to ACP Pretoria's Facebook page. Amazing. Thank you once again, everyone. Have a fantastic evening, and let's keep this movement alive. Let's keep this going into September, October, into the years ahead, and let's make this happen in the next 9 years, as Anne said. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Have a good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.
To walk into a library is to stumble into a celebration, a tribal party of diverse books, each uniquely designed. It's walking into an embrace of welcoming aunts and uncles, dancing and ululating, bearing different gifts of knowledge. Like air that holds no preference, like spirit held in trance. This here is a ritual as we dance between the shelves. Aren't we just beautiful in our sun-kissed hues of skin? Let our kin not get lost in translation or marred by segregation. Let our books pass down as tradition to nourish coming generations. We are all books in this library with different stories and identities. To read is to join the celebration. Are you here for the festivities?